Hi, I'm Bob Lederer, and welcome to Pharma Research VIDEO Report, where pharmaceutical, healthcare, biotech, and medical device market researchers come for news, insights, and commentary about their field that they just won't find anywhere else. We hope you had a great July 4th holiday weekend, and let's get started. The Wall Street Journal published a piece regarding wearable wireless tracking devices, but this one went far deeper into the more sophisticated healthcare possibilities and, for the moment, roadblocks to any such progress. We're all familiar with how patients are currently using mobile apps to monitor their own activity, but physicians are doing the same. They're studying whether wearables can actually improve patients' health by spurring them to get more active. And there's even way more potential that can be unleashed. Take, for instance, Mayo Clinic College of Medicine anesthesiologist David Cook, who's been using Fitbits to track activity levels of his cardiac surgery patients. It's a great application, but those efforts have showed emerging technical challenges in being able to access that data once collected. Mayo technicians have had to write software for Dr. Cook in order to extract information from those Fitbits. There were also additional difficulties in merging data from different devices into the diverse health database. And Dr. Cook says there's just no simple way so far for physicians to get to it. Coming to the rescue, Samsung and Apple, both of which have announced that they are on their road to efforts to resolve these kinds of issues. Next, there's a report in MedCity News that says the number of clinical mobile health devices has been growing slowly. But Lux Research predicts that healthcare reform is ginning up a market situation in which clinical devices will come to dominate this segment inside of the next 10 years. The 2013 $5.1 billion mobile health market included $372 million from clinical vital sign monitoring. But that's going to evolve, so much so that Lux Research estimates that it'll go from a primarily health and fitness app marketplace to one dominated by clinical monitoring apps. That will multiply eightfold the mobile health app market sales revenue generation, reaching $41.8 billion by 2023. Lux Research associate Nick Kurji says hospitals finding ways to maximize the usefulness of mobile health devices is going to be a prime catalyst in that market takeoff. And finally, it's the job of Best Practices LLC to help client-side companies understand current and future trends in their respective marketplaces. And in the pharmaceutical and healthcare market, which has been evolving in so many different directions and booming, Best Practices has released 4 recent reports that evaluate that market from many different perspectives and dimensions. Its latest report caught my eye. It's called Increasing Market Access Through Innovative Payer Market Research, and it led me to reach out to President Chris Bogan. My conversation with Chris began with his explanation of why, for pharmaceutical companies, payer research has become all-consuming after years of decidedly passive concern.
And we see a lot of change out there. I think one of the more powerful currents is that there are more influencers speaking up and changing the world in the pharmaceutical area. So in the old days, it was always the physician who tended to be the compass to true north. It's no longer as clearly true. Now we're seeing payers, accountable care organizations, integrated health networks, and many different forms of payers all stand up, exert their influence, and begin to change the way new products are brought to market and the way products actually grow and succeed. There's a lot of change.
Can you lay the credit or the blame, depending on your perspective, on the Affordable Care Act, or does it go way beyond that?
I think the Affordable Care Act has unleashed a whole set of changes around outcomes, electronic health records, and the way we think about delivery of healthcare, recognizing that we cannot always in the voice and wave the flag of innovation, say that that's the first and foremost. We have to be able to provide great healthcare, innovative healthcare at affordable cost. And we are not affordable. And as a nation, I worry that we're no longer leading the world, as we'd like to believe, in delivering the best health care to all populations.
But you know, there are components in ACA that also play big into the payer side, namely that you can't get rid of somebody who develops, you know, a really serious condition, and you have to accept people based on their application without really knowing what their medical history is. And so getting the payer perspective and the payer influence into your planning becomes that much more important as well, does it not?
Absolutely. It's critically important. It's a complicated world because there are many factors. It's not a silver bullet question. So among the many factors that I think the Affordable Care Act is trying to wrestle with is the fact that pharmaceutical manufacturers and the cost of medicines and devices and such is one big factor. But our largest healthcare expenditure in the overall healthcare pie actually flows through our hospitals and care there. And so there's a complex set of costs there. And the payers have a piece. And the truth is, in many medicines, they've paid for non-responders. And that's just until they wash out, there's a lot of cost that is actually for people who didn't respond to the medicines because we didn't understand. So the Affordable Care Act, I think, is trying to be a catalyst to press all of these variables together to say we have to be able to cover all Americans and we have to be able to be much more thoughtful and effective. And so it is the catalyst for dramatic change. And the payer now, I think, is one of those stakeholders or constituents that's at the forefront. They're very, very important. There's a dramatic new drug that has been launched in the last 6 months called Sovaldi. It's Gilead Sciences drug. It's revolutionary in that it cures hepatitis C, which over the long term would lead to the death of, hepatitis C patients. There are at least 130 million people in the world with hepatitis C. In the United States, it's, I think, judged to usually be somewhere in the 3 to 6 million people suffering from it. And they will all probably die because it will basically cause their liver to fail, for them to develop a cancer that will be devastating as well. Now, this drug is very expensive, relatively speaking. It's $84,000 for a 12-week treatment, but it's cures. It's a true cure. So it's revolutionized. So this medicine is interesting because it's reset pharmaceutical launch history. In 3 months of the first 3 months of this calendar year, Sovaldi generated about $2.3 billion in sales. Previously, the 12-month high water benchmark of a new product coming to the market was $1.5 million. So the insurers have stood up, though, and battled it because it's a terrifying prospect if they were to have to pay $84,000 per patient and suddenly 1 million of them showed up. That would be a dramatic cost that would be would be devastating to them economically. So they are wrestling to try to see if they can pressure Gilead to lower its cost. One large pharmacy benefits manager has boycotted it and said they won't carry it and tried to sort of ferment others to a degree to this. They're working actively with others who are developing new medicines to see if they can't encourage them to sort of suggest that they'll come to market at lower cost. So it's a very dramatic, brawling marketplace with, the pharmaceutical manufacturer that's developed this life-saving drug, pitched against payers who want to cover it, but they don't want to do it all at once.
Right, and yet, from what I understand, the $84,000 figure is actually not as much as the total cost that one of those payers might actually have to put out over an individual's lifetime if that person stayed on that plan for 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 years.
You're exactly right, and that's what makes this issue so interesting and complicated. 84,000 is a lot. However, it saves lives, and the cost of a liver transplant is typically somewhere between 600,000 to 700,000. So if if you waited that long, you would have Medicare and others picking up hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars per patient. Moreover, making this even interesting, previous generation of medicine, because it didn't cure, it required longer treatment regimens and often was done with a sort of a multi-drug approach, actually was more expensive than the curative approach. However, because they didn't work as well, there wasn't the sort of tsunami of patients lined up to want to use them.
Okay, let's zero in a little bit on the payer research that's going on. From your perspectives, from the studies you've done, are any of the major pharmaceutical companies much farther advanced in that work than maybe their peers?
Yes. I mean, I think it's not been an overnight change. The pharmaceutical companies have always known that payers were important. There have always been, significant managed markets entities in all companies to deal with the payers. So they have done everything from formal to informal work. But I think what's happened is it's been not nearly as deep, not nearly as systematic, not nearly as innovative, and not nearly as far-seeing as you've often, observed on the healthcare provider side of research. So if I had to generalize, the large big pharma have recognized this and have, invested money in trying to engage different kinds of research and developing specialists in the research side to begin to deal with the payer side. What they don't do very well is that they don't connect the dots effectively. By that I mean there are many different parts of the organization that may engage payers in one perspective or another. So clearly it's managed markets, and so you see your managed markets account executives who call upon them. But you also see frequently in medical affairs, you may have healthcare liaisons that specialize in payer and outcome issues and call upon payers. And so they may be housed under medical affairs. You may have a health economics and outcomes research group that's doing work that's relevant and critical to payers. And they could be under medical affairs or they could be under R&D. So the reality is you have many different types of specialists engaging and hearing potentially important or insightful information from the payers, but the ability to connect it is important. And it's not happening at the levels we do. The big companies don't do it effectively, nor do the small companies.
So is it fair or unfair to look at payer research right now and describe it as kind of in its infancy?
Payers have much more impact and influence earlier, and therefore if you don't understand their needs and you don't bring shape your clinical trials to have the elements that they want, they will flat out tell you no, and your drug can fail or falter coming into market. That's quite different than what it was 5-10 years ago. That fact of new power and the ability to really cause a market to succeed or fail, or a product coming into market to succeed or fail, I think is what caused pharmaceutical companies to say we have to accelerate. And they've had too many bad surprises with payers that they thought would embrace their products and have not. That's what sort of led to maybe call it a renaissance and a reinvestment and a rethinking and restructuring of how you do research to understand this new constituent. What's interesting and challenging is that arguably the deepest tools are not scalable, and the scalable tools are not necessarily the deepest. So let me share some examples. So in our research, when we looked at a whole host of tools that could be used to glean insight, and this could be, meeting one-on-one with executives, they could be advisory boards, they could be, focus groups, it could be interviews, they could be outcomes research, there could be meetings at conferences. I mean, there are many venues and such. What we discovered that the single one that was rated most highly was what we called an executive exchange, where a senior executive from a pharmaceutical company would meet with a senior executive from a payer, and they would talk about their business and clinical and their various needs. And so what we discovered was that the insights that were coming for both sides were dramatically rated as very valuable and helped them understand each other. So that was interesting. Now, when we asked, have you scaled these? Most companies said no, they're ad hoc or episodic. We found a couple companies where they've set goals to say we have to have X number of dinners peer-to-peer in the course of a year. And then the next level, we said, well, let's take it deeper. I said, what happens to that information? I said, well, it dramatically affects our executives. And I said, well, are you harvesting it? Are you codifying it? Are you doing sort of after-action reviews? And they said, no. So we've begun to advocate, and we've had clients say, we need to put somebody from the research organization in there to almost do a debrief, to ask the executive vice president or the president or the SVP, what did you hear? What did you learn? What do we need to know? Capture it, codify it, and then share it. You have to have the larger scale, the higher end, the broader based, typically more quantitative approaches, which would come typically out of panels and polls and others, where you begin to piece together individuals who are either engaged in the payer space and can understand it.
Best Practices homepage, best-in-class.com, has a rundown of all its extremely insightful reports. You should take a look. You will hear more from Chris Bogan next week in part 2 of our look at the changing pharmaceutical and healthcare research marketplaces. Frankly, I can't wait to share it with you. That's this week's Pharma Research Video Report. We are looking for sponsors, as you probably know, and you really should give it serious consideration. First of all, the video format is hot, and this is the only regular video news report that covers pharma, healthcare, biotech, and medical device market research. Tests of our videos since February have demonstrated a good-sized audience, but it really also grows over time, and viewers have expressed substantial curiosity about research options heretofore unknown to them. So, drop me a line at rflbob@gmail.com, and we'll take you through the process of learning how your marketing and sales efforts can be boosted using PRVR. And a reminder that our videos are now available in the cloud for those of you who cannot access YouTube. Plus, the video is also available for iPhone, iPad, and iPod Touch, so you can watch it anywhere you are at any time. All you have to do is download our new mobile app. It's the RBDR app, and it's in the Apple Store. With so many ways to view Pharma Research Video Report and the fact that it is free, we hope you'll tell many of your friends and peers about this and maybe even share it with them. Have a great research week, and we'll see you soon.